Hello, I'm David Rosen, Chair of the IOF Rules Commission. I'm going to be talking this morning about the Foot-O rule changes for 2024 and briefly about event cancellation. I've just got a couple of slides about event cancellation from the perspective of the IOF rules. 2612 says that the organiser must stop and postpone or cancel a race if at any point it becomes clear that circumstances have arisen which make the race dangerous for the competitors, officials or spectators. Examples might be very severe weather, fire or flood. So it's clear that the organiser must act proactively and think about the dangers and not just rely on competitors, officials or spectators making their own mind up about the safety of the event. Of course, there are other reasons why an event might have to be cancelled. The event might lose permissions, or there could be logistical issues such as with car parking or transport, etc. If the event has to be cancelled due to reasons outside of the organiser's control, then the organiser must make a refund but may retain a minimum proportion of the entry fee in order to cover committed costs. The timetable for this set of new rules is that they are approved by IOF Council at their meeting at the end of November. They're published in December to be valid from the 1st of January. IOF Council has delegated the main responsibility to the IOF Events Supervisory Board, which is a subset of Council, to approve the new rules, but they still need to be signed off by IOF Council, and ESB have to check that IOF Council are aware of and approve of major changes. In this case, the referee system is one such major change. As usual, we've taken the opportunity to make some minor changes to improve the uniformity of the wording in the rules. But in this presentation, I'll run through the most significant changes. Some of the changes obviously apply to the three other disciplines, skio, mountain bike and trailo as well. And remember that when the rules are published, there is a list of the significant changes at the end on the very last page, and amended rules have a vertical line in the left margin. So the first rule change I'll talk about is related to knockout sprints. As you're all aware, knockout sprint is this new and exciting format that's been introduced quite recently. It's been a bit experimental up to now, but certainly provided some very exciting races at World Championships, and now World Ranking events are starting to use the format as well. Now, in the World Championships, when someone gets knocked out of the knockout sprint at an early stage, they've probably got lots of other opportunities during the week to compete. But it may be that at a World Ranking event, the knockout sprint is one of the few races or the only race that the competitors are aiming at. And if they get knocked out straight away in the qualification race or in an early round of the knockout sprint, they'll be a bit frustrated, especially since each individual race is very, very short. So we've been asked to allow some variations for the knockout sprint at a World Ranking event where runners can get the opportunity to have extra races. One option is that those runners who don't make the final from the semi-final can go on to B or C finals. So the runners who are ranked third or fourth in each of the three semi-finals go to the B final, and the runners who are ranked fifth or sixth in each of the three semi-finals go to the C final. Then another option is that for those who did not qualify for the knockout section, who failed to qualify from the qualification race, they could have a further individual race with a time start. Then, as a consequence of those changes, we've also made some changes to the rule about final placings, so that where these variations are used, it's clear how to allocate the final placings for a knockout sprint, and the final placings then influence the world ranking points for a knockout sprint, because in the subsequent sections of the knockout sprint, the points are based on placings, not times. We know that athletes are very keen to carry some sort of GPS watch in order to record their tracks for analysis after their race. And the old rules for lower level events, including world ranking events, were that such devices can be carried provided that they have no map display and no communication ability other than receiving GPS data. However, as time has gone on, standard GPS watches have become more and more complicated. Nearly all of them now have the ability to display a map, and many of them have some sort of communication ability, such as Bluetooth or an eSIM. It's been very difficult for organisers to decide whether a particular GPS watch that a competitor is carrying actually does obey the current rules or not. So we've decided that we need to be more trusting of the competitors and to simplify the rule. So now the rule just says that such devices can be carried provided that they are not used for communication or navigation purposes. In World Championships and World Cup, we feel that we still need to restrict what competitors can carry on their wrists, because if the media or the public see someone carrying a GPS device on their wrist, they have difficulty in understanding that the competitor won't use that to work out where they are if they get slightly mislaid. So we've now said that competitors will be able to carry their own device as long as it's on their back in a GPS vest or maybe a bum bag. I talked earlier about the general duty of care of an organiser, and we saw at the World Championships relay this summer a particular issue with one competitor who got extremely exhausted and was having trouble in running or even walking in the last part of the race. And there, the organizer did attempt to rescue the competitor, sent out a stretcher party, who eventually managed to scoop the competitor up and carried the competitor over the line. But it's been felt following that incident that we do need a rule to make it clear that the organizer can prevent a competitor from continuing if they believe that the competitor is at serious risk of harm from continuing. But note, this isn't intended to increase the duty of the organiser to safeguard competitors. As I said earlier, the organiser always had a duty of care, but competitors still have responsibility for their own well-being. We're making some small changes to the rules about complaints and protests. Up to now, the organiser could set a time limit if they wished for complaints. Now we're saying that the default time limit is 15 minutes after the full results have been published, though the new rule actually says that the time limit can be something different if the organiser decides. Up to now, it's been slightly unclear whether anybody can make a protest once the organiser has given their decision on a complaint. We're now making it absolutely clear that only the team official or competitor who made the complaint can go on to make the protest about the organiser's decision if they don't agree. If someone else is unhappy with the organiser's decision about a complaint, then they must make their own complaint, which the organiser can then make a decision on, and then if that person disagrees, they can then protest, and it will then go to the jury. We don't want anything going to the jury before the organiser has had a chance to comment and make a decision on it. In IOF high-level events, you have to pay a €50 protest fee before you can make a protest. And the current rule says that that has to be paid in cash. We're taking that away because in many countries nowadays, cash is going out of use. And in fact, the IOF now has a very simple way of paying by credit card or PayPal straight to the IOF. On the web page for the IOF office, if you scroll down a bit, you get to online payment to IOF, and it's very easy to make a payment. Once the payment has been made, then the person who made the payment gets an email receipt, which could then be shown to the event advisor to prove that the payment has been made. If the protest is accepted by the jury, then the person who made the protest is entitled to a refund of their €50. It's just a question of asking IOF office to make the refund, and then the person will get their money back and they'll get an email looking like this. In recent years, the IOF has introduced new sprint formats, such as the sprint relay and the knockout sprint. It's become clear that the standard complaint and protest system, which involves a jury, struggles to cope with the short timescales required for some of those events, especially if TV is involved. Therefore, in 2023, we've been trialling a new referee system where complaints are decided by the referees, there's no possibility of a protest, and there is no jury. So in a couple of the World Cups this year, the referee system was used, and the referees had to work quite hard, particularly in the recent World Cup in Italy, to resolve the complaints. It's therefore felt that this is a useful system going forward, and we're now writing it into the competition rules. There's normally a referee and an assistant referee, and they need to be as independent as possible from the organisation, not involved with any of the teams, and as experienced and knowledgeable about IOF rules as possible. They're appointed by the IOF for higher level events or by the National Federation for a world ranking event. A new referee system guideline will be published shortly, giving more guidance on how to use the system. Appeals are the third stage of the complaint protest system. They're very rare. They can only be made by federations. We've just made a couple of small clarifications. If a jury is not yet set up, or if the event is over and the jury is no longer active, then the IOF disciplinary panel acts as the jury if someone doesn't agree with an organiser's decision. And previously that seemed to be called an appeal, but it's clearly just a protest. We've also clarified the valid reasons for an appeal. An appeal can only be made against a jury or referee decision if there has been a serious procedural error in reaching the decision, or if the competition rules have clearly been incorrectly applied or interpreted. So you can't just put in an appeal if you don't agree with the result of the protest. 1217 is the rule about start intervals in ordinary events such as world ranking events. And we've removed the world normal just to make it clear that you're not allowed to ignore this rule, that it is a hard and fast rule for the start intervals. There's been a long-standing rule that on the day of the competition, the use of any map of the competition area by competitors or team officials is prohibited until permitted by the organiser. The reason for that rule is that competitors might have their run and then come back to the arena and could show competitors who have yet to start where the course goes on an old map of the area. And of course, that would be unfair. If competitors are in quarantine before they start, then that possibility is taken away. And it really doesn't matter what maps competitors look at in quarantine. We have, however, added in an extra sentence that the organiser may make further restrictions of map usage, which must be published in the final bulletin, because sometimes there are circumstances where the organiser might want to make those extra restrictions. For example, if the quarantine area in a relay is in a place where you can hear the announcer, you might want to then restrict usage of the competition area map. As you probably know, the IOF has been working to equalise winning times for men and women. That finally comes fully into effect this year in 2024, so the relevant rules have been updated to reflect that. On each control, there needs to be a control code, and Rule 19.6 says how large that control code must be. The previous minimum height of 3 centimetres was inconvenient because it meant the figure couldn't fit onto a standard control unit. Many organisers ignored this rule without seemingly any problems. Others had to spend a lot of time making up separate cards with the control code on to attach to the control unit. The new minimum of 1.5 centimetres means that a number is easily visible from still 2 metres away, and that new minimum should make life easier for the organisers. Finally, Appendix 11 contains the rules for the Oceania Orienteering Championships, which has now become an annual event with a programme alternating between sprint and forest. So the rule has been updated, and I'll leave it to the Australians and New Zealanders to have a look in more detail at that rule when it's published. We had a consultation exercise earlier in the year, and now we've produced a new version of the IOF control descriptions, which comes into effect on the 1st of January 2024. The changes are mainly minor, updating the cross-references to ISOM and ISS-PROM. The main changes are listed at the front. There is a new symbol for railway or tramway. It's not advised to put a control on a working railway, but sometimes there are places where old railway lines still exist and can be used. There's also a new special instruction symbol for a map flip. It's become quite common to have the first part of your course on one side of the map and the second part of the course on the back side, and so you need to turn over the map at the change, and it's been not unknown for people to get to the end of the first part and not know what to do. So it's important to have a control description showing what to do. Finally, you're probably aware that the new IOF transgender policy has been published. That followed quite a big consultation exercise. We're also updating the jury guidelines, and they will be published quite soon. I hope that it's been helpful to get a preview of the proposed rule changes, and we're aiming to send out a newsletter to all IOF Foot event advisors in December, which will include the changes to the rules. Very much for listening. Are there any questions or comments?